I still remember the day it all crumbled. The phone call, the sinking feeling in my gut, the way my hands trembled as I read the email. My business, my dream was gone. The investors pulled out. The bank accounts drained. Bills stacked up like a cruel joke. And the worst part, the people closest to me didn't comfort me. They laughed. Not in my face, of course, but behind my back, in hushed whispers, in smirks when they thought I wasn't looking. Guess he wasn't as smart as he thought. All that talk about being a CEO. And now what? He should have just taken a regular job like the rest of us. They didn't offer help. They didn't check in. They didn't believe I'd ever recover. I sat alone in my tiny empty apartment, staring at my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. My so-called friends had vanished. My family shook their heads in disappointment. My bank account was a joke. I had two choices: stay down or get up. Got up. For the next 3 years I worked in silence. I rebuilt everything from scratch. No handouts, no favors, just sheer determination. Late nights, early mornings, failures, setbacks, but I refused to quit. Then one day something changed. My phone buzzed. An old acquaintance. Then another. And another. "Hey man, long time no talk. I saw your company is hiring. Any openings? I always knew you'd make it big. Think you can help me out? Bro, we should catch up. Let's talk opportunities." The same people who once laughed at my downfall now wanted jobs at my company. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the messages flooding my inbox, and I smiled. They had no idea what was coming next. 3 years ago I had everything, at least that's what I thought. A promising startup, a solid business plan, and a group of people who I believed were my closest friends. We'd sit around in bars, talk about dreams, ambitions, and how one day I'd build something big. They cheered me on, called me a genius, told me I was destined for success. And I believed them. The business was growing, investors were showing interest, and for a while it seemed like I was on my way to something massive. I poured everything into it, my time, my energy, my savings. Late nights, early mornings, running on caffeine and ambition. I didn't just want success. I needed it. Then the rug was pulled out from under me. One bad deal. A crucial investor backed out at the last minute, spooked by market uncertainties. That one move sent a ripple effect through the entire company. The funding dried up. My remaining partners started panicking. Bills piled up faster than I could count. And before I even had time to process it, everything collapsed. I lost everything. The worst part wasn't the failure itself. It wasn't even the sleepless nights spent staring at my ceiling, wondering how I'd pay rent. No, the worst part was how people reacted. The same people who used to hype me up, the ones who called me the next big thing, suddenly weren't so supportive anymore. The pity in their eyes was worse than the laughter behind my back. I overheard them talking about me one night. I knew this would happen. He was always too ambitious for his own good. Man, I don't get why he didn't just get a normal job instead of wasting all that time. Stung. Not just because they doubted me, but because they had no idea how hard I had worked. They had no idea what I sacrificed to try and build something real. Friends stopped calling. Family members told me to be realistic and get a regular job. I went from being the guy with big dreams to just another failure. For a while I almost believed them. But something inside me refused to accept that this was the end. I started over. From scratch. I took every lesson from my failure and used it as fuel. I worked twice as hard, 10 times smarter. No shortcuts, no easy way out. I built connections, learned from past mistakes, and slowly, piece by piece, started building a new company. It wasn't easy. There were moments I wanted to give up, moments where it felt like I was climbing an endless mountain with no peak in sight. But I kept going. And then, after 3 years of grinding in the dark, the breakthrough happened. My new company took off. Investors who once ignored me were now sending emails. Clients lined up, eager to work with me. My business grew beyond what I had ever imagined. The same people who once doubted me were now watching from the sidelines, probably wondering how I did it. Then, the messages started coming in. Old friends who hadn't spoken to me in years suddenly wanted to reconnect. Acquaintances who once laughed at my failure were now congratulating me on LinkedIn. And the funniest part, many of them were asking for jobs. "Hey man, I saw your company is growing fast. Any chance you're hiring? I've always admired your work. Would love to be part of your team. Need an experienced guy in marketing. I'd be a great fit." I stared at the messages, shaking my head. The irony was almost too perfect. These were the same people who left me to struggle alone, who dismissed me when I was at my lowest. And now, they wanted a piece of my success. I leaned back in my office chair, my phone buzzing with even more messages. They thought I'd forget how they treated me. They thought I'd welcome them back with open arms. But they had no idea. I wasn't the same person anymore. I thought about ignoring the messages, just leaving them on read, letting them wonder why I wasn't responding. But a part of me wanted to see how far they'd go. So I replied, not with job offers, not with warm, welcoming words, just a simple, "Hey, long time no talk. What made you reach out?" I already knew the answer, but I wanted to hear them say it. Some got straight to the point. "Saw your company is doing big things. Thought I'd check in and see if you had any openings." Others tried the fake friendship route. "Bro, we should catch up. Miss the old days. Let's grab coffee soon." As if we had been close. As if they hadn't laughed behind my back when I lost everything. I played along, setting up a few meetings. Not because I was actually considering hiring them, no, this was something else. I needed to see them in person. I needed to hear them try to rewrite history. The first one to show up was Eric. Back when my first business collapsed, Eric was one of the loudest voices in the room mocking me. He never said it to my face, but I had heard the stories. The jokes at my expense. The way he told people I had been delusional for thinking I could ever make it. But now, he sat across from me in a fancy coffee shop, dressed a little too nicely, his nervous smile giving him away. "Man, I gotta say, I always knew you'd bounce back." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because I seem to remember hearing that you thought I was wasting my time." His smile faltered for just a second. "Ah, well, you know how people talk. But I always had faith in you. Anyway, I wanted to see if there's room for someone like me on your team. I think I could bring a lot of value." I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence hang between us. Then I leaned forward. "Eric, tell me something. Where were you when I lost everything?" He blinked. "What?" "When my company fell apart. When I was struggling to get back on my feet. Did you ever check in? Did you ever think to help? Or were you too busy making jokes?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Come on, man. That was years ago. We were all just messing around. It wasn't personal. It wasn't personal to you. But it was to me." He opened his mouth to respond, but I was done listening. I slid the check across the table and stood up. "Good luck finding a job, Eric. But it won't be here." I left before he could say another word. And it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I met with more of them. People who had turned their backs on me, now trying to act like they had always believed in me. The same patterns repeated. Excuses, backtracking, pretending they had been supportive all along. But the one that really got to me, it was Jake. Jake had been my closest friend. The guy who I thought had my back no matter what. But when I hit rock bottom, he wasn't there. Worse, he had been the one leading the jokes, the one telling people I was done for. I hadn't seen him in years. But one day he showed up at my office. Unannounced. "Dude, we need to talk." I looked up from my desk, staring at him. He was dressed sharp, confident, like he hadn't lost a night of sleep over what had happened between us. "Oh, about what?" He grinned, stepping forward. "Man, come on. Let's not pretend we aren't still boys. I see what you've built. It's incredible. And honestly, I'd love to be part of it." I leaned back in my chair, watching him. "You'd love to be part of it?" "Yeah. Look, I know we lost touch, but that was just life, you know? We were all young saying dumb stuff. But that's the past, right?" He was so casual about it. like none of it mattered. Like he hadn't been the one who laughed hardest when I fell. Jake, do you remember the night my first business collapsed? He frowned, shifting in his seat. I mean, not exactly. Why? Because I do. I remember calling you, desperate, telling you I didn't know what to do. And you told me, what was it again? Yeah. You said, maybe you should stop pretending you're some big-time CEO and just get a real job like the rest of us. The color drained from his face. Look, man, I didn't mean. You didn't mean it. Because it sure felt like you did. He swallowed hard, his confident grin gone. I messed up, all right. But that was years ago. I was dumb. I see what you've done now, and I just want to be part of it. Can't we move on? I exhaled, shaking my head. Move on. But that doesn't mean I forget. You weren't there when I needed you. You didn't believe in me when it mattered. And now, you think you can just walk in and reap the rewards. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Then I smiled. Jake, you were right about one thing. I did stop pretending to be a CEO. His eyes lit up for a second, thinking maybe I was about to forgive and forget. But then I finished. Because now, actually I'm one. And I don't hire people who laughed at me when I was down. I stood up, opened the door, and gestured for him to leave. Goodbye, Jake. He stood there for a second, his jaw tight, his hands clenching into fists. Then, without another word, he walked out. I shut the door behind him and let out a slow breath. They thought I'd forget. They thought they could just walk back into my life. But I had learned something in those dark years. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And I had done just that. I should have felt satisfied shutting the door on them. I should have felt triumphant watching them squirm, seeing them struggle to come up with excuses. But something still didn't sit right. Maybe it was because, for years, I had imagined this moment, proving them wrong, standing tall while they crawled back. But now that it was happening, it wasn't as simple as I thought. I wasn't just dealing with old acquaintances. Some of these people had been like family to me. And now that I had seen their desperation, their forced smiles, and their fake apologies, I realized something. They didn't actually regret how they treated me. They just regretted that I remembered. That night, I sat in my office long after everyone else had left. My phone buzzed with more messages. More people trying to squeeze back into my life. I scrolled through them, shaking my head. Hey bro, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I'd love to catch up. Man, I saw the article about your company. So happy for you. We should reconnect. I always knew you'd make it. Can we talk about a possible role at your company? Always knew I'd make it. That was the funniest part. Where was all this support when I was barely scraping by? When I was eating ramen noodles for dinner and figuring out how to pay rent? Where was this faith in me when I was at my lowest? I turned my phone off and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Had two options. I could let them keep reaching out, pretending nothing had happened, and let them slowly fade away. Or I could confront them. Not with passive-aggressive messages. Not with cold rejection emails. But face to face. I didn't just want them to know I remembered. I wanted them to feel it. A week later I sent out invitations. Not formal ones. Just a simple message to each of them. Let's meet. I want to talk. Friday night at 7 p.m. My office. No one declined. Of course they didn't. They thought this was their chance. That I was about to extend a hand. Give them what they wanted. They had no idea. When Friday rolled around, I prepared everything. I booked the conference room, had refreshments set up, made it look professional. I wanted them to walk in thinking they were stepping into an opportunity. And then I wanted to watch their faces change when they realized the truth. By 7:05 they had all arrived. Eric. A few others who had been part of the same circle. The same ones who had whispered behind my back, who had mocked me when I was struggling. They sat around the long glass conference table, exchanging pleasantries, flashing fake smiles. I stood at the head of the table, hands in my pockets, watching them. So, I began, my voice calm. You all reached out to me. Said you wanted to reconnect. Said you wanted to be part of my company. Mail. Jake leaned forward. Yeah, man. We always knew you had it in you. We're proud of what you built. And honestly, we'd love to be part of it. I let that sit for a second. Then I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a folder. Slowly, I placed it on the table and flipped it open. Inside, collection of screenshots, text, Facebook posts, group chat messages, all the things they thought I'd never see. The things they had said about me when I lost everything. I watched their faces shift from confidence to confusion to horror as they read the words they had written. Dude really thought he was gonna be a CEO, huh? I knew he'd fail. Some people just don't have it in them. Can't believe he wasted all those years just to end up broke. Silence. Heavy. Eric cleared his throat. Where did you get these? Shrugged. People talk. And apparently, some people still had these messages saved. No one spoke. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. So tell me, was this support? Was this belief in me? Jake shook his head quickly. Man, that was years ago. We were young. We were just joking. Joking, I repeated. I let out a cold chuckle. Right. Just like it was a joke when I was struggling and none of you checked in. Just like it was a joke when I needed help and all I got was silence. Eric ran a hand through his hair. Look, we messed up. We didn't think. No, you didn't think, I cut him off. You didn't think I'd remember. You didn't think I'd actually make it. And now that I have, you think you can just walk back into my life and pretend you were always on my side. No one had anything to say to that. I let the silence stretch. Let them sit in their discomfort. Then I stood up straight. Here's the thing. I built this company without you. I rebuilt my life without you. And I'm not about to let people who laughed at my downfall have a seat at my table now. I closed the folder and slid it back into my briefcase. I didn't invite you here to offer you jobs. I invited you here to remind you that I remember everything. And to let you know that there's no place for you here. Jake clenched his jaw. So that's it. You're just gonna hold a grudge. I met his eyes. No, Jake. I've moved on. But that doesn't mean I forget. I walked to the door and opened it. You can see yourselves out. One by one they stood. No words. No protest. Just awkward, defeated silence as they walked past me. Jake was the last one to leave. He paused at the doorway, looking like he wanted to say something. Maybe an excuse. Maybe an apology. But he must have seen something in my expression because in the end, he just nodded stiffly and walked out. I shut the door behind them, exhaling slowly. It was done. Not just the confrontation, but the last piece of my past that had been weighing me down. They had laughed when I lost everything. But I wasn't laughing now. I was too busy running the company they once said I'd never build. Months passed, and life moved forward. My business continued to grow, expanding beyond anything I had imagined. New offices, bigger contracts, a team of people who truly believed in the vision. Every day was a reminder of how far I had come, not just in business but in life. The past. It didn't haunt me anymore. I had let it go. And yet, every so often, reminders of it found their way back to me. One afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. Hey, I know it's been a while, but I just wanted to say, sorry. I handled things badly back then and I regret it. I hope you're doing well. No name, but I knew who it was. I stared at the message for a long moment. Years ago, I would have been desperate for this. I would have craved the apology, the validation. But now I didn't need it. Because the truth was, I had already moved on. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I didn't wish them harm. I just didn't care. I had outgrown them. So I didn't reply. Not out of malice, but because some things don't need answers. Some chapters don't need to be reopened. Some things are simply better left behind. It was a clear, crisp morning when I found myself standing in front of my company's headquarters, looking up at the sign with my name on it. Hit me then how much had changed. How I had gone from losing everything to building something greater than I had ever imagined. And I had done it without shortcuts, without fake friendships, without compromising who I was. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. Not because I had finally won, but because I had realized something even more important. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right all along, that you were always capable, always worthy. And the moment you stop waiting for others to see it, that's when you truly win. I took a deep breath, stepped through the doors, and never looked back.